So when we were doing the research, we found out that you were actually a professional golfer. Let's start there.
Played a season on the IGT tour in South Africa. Yeah, I was fortunate I had an alternative path. Whereas a lot of those guys that I played with on the tour, they didn't have a backup plan. Which when you're building a business, I think is actually a good thing.
Yeah, all in, burn the boats.
You're all in, yeah, burn the boats, exactly. But
sounds like a more brutal version of running a startup. It sounds like
way more brutal. Yeah. My experience of working in a corporate, they're not meritocracies. They're the complete opposite. It's basically all about who can kiss the most ass.
Matt has been super helpful. Having run sales teams, I can feel the problem. All the stuff you're talking around in terms of like, I'm sort of going back and wish I had some of this data before.
Yeah.
Because that identification, the benchmarking, what's up is so helpful.
We couldn't have done what we're doing 10 years ago, to be fair. But that's why I think this is the best time to be building a business.
Hi, I'm James Johnson, founder and CEO coach, and this is the Peer Effect podcast, where you'll learn how to 10x your business. Lots of founders that I work with have questions about their GTM team, how to maximize it, how to separate good to great performers, and they would love the idea of doubling the performance. It's why I'm delighted to have Matt Milligan on the show today. His business, Uhubs, helps you identify really what's driving those hidden capabilities to get true performance. So Matt personally has been recognized in the Forbes 30 under 30, and Uhubs was recognized as the rising star at London Tech Week this year. I'm delighted to welcome Matt to the show. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, James. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to the chat today.
Well, don't say that too early.
I'm not sure what you've got in store for me yet, so we'll ask me that question at the end, and I'll give you a more honest answer.
So when we were doing the research, we found out that you were actually a professional golfer. Let's start there.
Yeah, I'll just kind of caveat this by saying that the golf game is nowhere near what it was today. So I think I've played 2 rounds of golf this year, which is not a lot of golf.
For your investors listening.
Yes, yeah. There's just not a lot of time to spend on the golf course. But yeah, I played a season on the IGT tour in South Africa. So that's a feeder tour for the Sunshine Tour, which is the main African tour. And lived the dream. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Got to play with some amazing players. Absolutely was golf mad growing up.
Yeah.
The sport taught me a lot about life and business. Played with some great players, some of whom are now literally traveling around on private jets, playing for millions every week. I wasn't ever at that level.
Yeah.
In terms of there is a big gap between being good and being one of the best in the world. But it was a great experience. Had a lot of good times on the golf course for sure.
Any regrets from shifting away from it?
No, I had a couple of moments when I was playing in South Africa.
Yeah.
I played with a guy called Anton Haig, who any sort of golf fans will know of. So he was the youngest ever winner of the Johnny Walker Classic. I think he won it when he was like 17 or 18, and he was touted as the next Ernie Els.
Yeah.
And then he kind of had a big fall from grace, and I sort of played quite a lot of golf with him when he was trying to rediscover his golf game, but he had all of these crazy stories. But playing golf with Anton made me realize the levels in the game. The guy had more talent in one finger than the rest of us put together. It's just unbelievable. So, I recognized that I was fortunate to have like other attributes that I could apply to the world of business, and always enjoyed, as I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit today, always enjoyed selling stuff and building businesses. So I was fortunate I had an alternative path. Whereas a lot of those guys that I played with on the tour, they didn't have a plan. They didn't have a backup plan.
Yeah.
They had no plan B. Which when you're building a business, I think is actually a good thing.
Yeah, all in, burn the boats.
You're all in, burn the boats, exactly. But when you're going for professional golf, it's brutal. Like those guys are, they're trying to get sponsors together to pay. It's expensive as well. You've got to have good backing financially. And if you miss the cut, you not only are you not getting paid, but you're losing money on the caddy, the hotel, the practice rounds.
Wow.
You got a high cost base. So it's kind of like running a startup in a way.
Sounds like a more brutal version of running a startup. It sounds like
way more brutal. Yeah. And your mistakes are like massively magnified.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like in business, you can make mistakes and very quickly move on. Whereas if you hit 3 out of bounds on the 10th tee, you're done. Your tournament's done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a game of very fine margins. Do you play yourself?
I have played, which I think is a very different answer.
Rugby injury.
It wasn't that rugby that stopped me. It was more the fact I was really bad at it. I enjoyed it when I was working in the Philippines. I enjoyed it playing out there, like when sort of you're on lovely courses, it's very sunny, and you have a caddy who's really good and is like pointing out which clubs to use and how to hit your putt. And miraculously, when I came back to UK and it was wet and I didn't have that advantage, my golf game fell off a cliff. So I was probably like sort of 12 shots more around. So
you're a fair weather golfer.
Fair weather and significant help golfer.
It's a beautiful way to spend a Saturday afternoon if you've got the time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it does require a lot of time.
Yeah.
So it's not super conducive as a sport to building a business.
Yeah. So what's your origin story then? So you've kind of you did golf. You then doing it for a year. What got you to where you are now?
Yeah, I'll try not to make it too long.
Yeah.
But I grew up in the UK to South African parents, so I was sort of like in a way kind of first generation. Although my grandparents on my dad's side were British, Swedish on my mum's side, and always enjoyed building stuff. Always had a little bit of kind of creative spark. And the school I went to, there's a few of us that are very entrepreneurial and have gone on to run businesses of our own. I was actually in San Francisco last week with one of my oldest schoolmates who's, interestingly enough, running a recruitment business.
Amazing.
And we've been mates since we were like 12, 13 years old. So we didn't come from much. You know, we went to a pretty sort of tough all boys school in a place called Wokingham, which is about 45 minutes outside London. We had to kind of get creative to figure out ways to fund our lifestyles, you know, fund partying and doing chasing girls when we were teenagers. I got a job caddying at Sunningdale Golf Club when I was 13 years old. So that was my entrance to the workforce. And on weekends and some sort of school holidays, I'd get the train from Wokingham to Sunningdale. Really early in the morning, and then I would rock up at the caddy's office, Vince, and try and get a bag for the day. And that experience of working those shifts at Sunningdale, young age, carrying a bag for oftentimes very successful business people on, you know, either corporate golf days or even getting to know some of the members pretty well. That was very formative. So I had basically a business education at a really young age, just listening.
Amazing.
So there's a bunch of stories around that experience, but that taught me what's possible. And I think the other thing that it taught me is that although environments like that have a reputation for being kind of snobby, quite a lot of the members that I got to sort of become a regular caddy for, they come from really deprived backgrounds, and they had really built businesses and used business as a way for social mobility, to create amazing lifestyles for themselves, to be able to provide for their families. So that was really an inspiring moment. And I think also my background, like coming from a bit of a family of entrepreneurs, my dad had his own business. My dad's dad had his own businesses in South Africa, did all kinds of stuff, from sort of logistics through to property. I kind of always knew it was going to be the path that I would go into. And I think just the final thing I learned about myself pretty early on is that I'm pretty bad at being told what to do. So sort of autonomy is a very important value for me personally. And that's probably why I didn't do amazingly well at school or university. I just really didn't like the kind of confinement of being treated exactly the same, no matter what your needs or unique strengths are. So did a bunch of stuff, lots of different kind of side hustles growing up, everything from sort of selling tickets for under 18 nights in Reading, through to some e-commerce businesses and buying and selling sports equipment. So lots of different stuff. went to university in Birmingham, graduated. I ended up going back to South Africa. That's when I did my year on the IGT. Mum got married, had to come back to the UK for the wedding. And she basically said, you got to get a proper job. And it was at that point that I went into the world of consulting. So,
wow, that feels going slightly back into like sort of a school, university structure.
Yeah. But I remember there was a letter from the university. I basically figured out pretty quick. So lecture attendance wasn't mandatory. So I worked out that I could get a full-time job. So I actually ended up getting a full-time job in retail, working for a clothing store called Hollister. And it was a really exciting time. They were a US company. They'd come over to the UK. I didn't really love the work, but I loved the people that I was working with. And we set up a new Hollister store. So I started off in the Bullring, if you know the shopping centre. And then got kind of recruited to be part of the kind of expansion team to open a new store in Solihull. That was awesome because I was like building stuff, and we were launching this thing from scratch, and we had the opportunity to input into, everything from the launch event and the party. And so I worked full time for my first and second year of uni. I think I went to maybe less than 10 lectures. And then the letter came in the post in my second year saying, if you don't start coming, we're going to kick you out. And I basically had to do the degree pretty much in the final year, which I owe to a very good friend of mine who's a genius. He went on to do his master's at Cambridge, and he's a good friend of mine today. I actually said that to him on his wedding day a couple of years ago. I said, I would never have made it through uni if it wasn't for you. Because he basically gave me a private tutoring experience and taught me what I needed to know to get through uni. So I didn't really fit in at uni, and then I didn't fit in the corporate world either. So very quickly, like going into EY, I was joining like all of these graduates from top universities around the country, and within about 6 months, I basically come up with a business idea within EY, which ended up becoming the Startup Network, which was our offering for startups and scale-ups in the UK. And I basically sort of built that as a business inside of EY, which was quite an interesting experience.
I mean, how welcoming to entrepreneurship was EY? Because you think from an external bit, you think, oh, probably quite disciplined, like follow this process. It must have been quite a thing for them to allow you to, or to persuaded them to do that.
Yeah, so I'd answer that question in two ways. There was one or two partners who absolutely loved it, and they got behind me and they gave me backing, and they protected me from resourcing, so I didn't have to go on client projects, and I could focus on building this thing. One of whom is actually an angel investor in my current business.
Amazing.
A guy called Mark Hutchinson. He's a legend. I would say the other 99.9% of the organization absolutely hated me. Because I was just basically breaking rules. And it even got down to things like promotions, and they were refusing to promote me into a manager role because I didn't tick basically any of the boxes that I needed to tick. So you start to realize pretty quickly that my experience of working in a corporate and also working with other corporates is that they're not meritocracies. They're the complete opposite. And it's basically all about political games, who can kiss the most ass. And that for me was just the complete opposite to what I'm about personally. I obviously come from like a sporting background where everything is merit based. It's like you work hard, you achieve, and then you get the just rewards.
Yeah.
And that kind of conflicted with my core values. So I just knew within 6 months that I wasn't going to be a long-term place for me. But that said, I ended up building the startup program, and they seconded me over to a new business they had acquired called Seren here in Shoreditch, around the corner actually. So I ended up sticking there for like 4.5, 5 years and learnt loads, built a network, and learnt how to build a business within the confines of a big company.
Yeah.
Which was quite an unorthodox way to kind of cut your teeth, I guess.
It's really good. It's just sort of parallel, sort of bit from my experience of like Jardines essentially as you were building small businesses or running small businesses in a big conglomerate. So it's kind of like they sort of allocated people and cash to a series of businesses, and you had to grow them, turn them around, or grow them.
Like a venture studio model
A little bit. I mean, they owned the stuff. They tend to do joint ventures. They've been around for like almost 200 years. So they sort of have this collection of very random businesses in very random places. They've been through quite a lot of rationalization to try and make it make sense over the last 20 years. But like there was a period of kind of like business you wouldn't even have thought of that kind of existed. But that was what was quite cool about it, to have that opportunity of sort of, you get all the training and benefits as a young sort of employee, and a support system that maybe you don't appreciate. You feel like it's blocking you or thing, but actually it's probably quite valuable.
Yeah.
While being given freedom to go and cut your teeth. So I mean, it sounds like we're quite similarly lucky.
Yes.
In that experience. I mean, I took a lot from it, although I fought against it quite a lot of the time. Some of the structures and like if they progress, you can't progress unless they progress mentality.
Yes.
Like,
how long did you last in that environment?
6 years.
Yeah, so sort of similar.
Yeah. But it sounds like we both went into it thinking that it was a means to an end as opposed to an end in itself.
I'd agree. Yeah,
totally. There's more a question like when rather than if.
Yeah. Are you still in touch with many of the folks you worked with?
Yeah.
Any of them still in that world?
Some. Yeah. Not many. Because I think to do that sort of program, you do need to in itself be a little bit entrepreneurial. And therefore there's a sort of a clash between like your entrepreneurial drive and that sort of that freedom and control thing versus the sort of they do put a series of nice, bigger and bigger challenges and opportunities in front of you. But within, I think that sense of lack of control would get a true entrepreneur at the end.
Yeah. My experience was that they try to almost institutionalize. I don't know if they try to institutionalize you. Maybe that's like a clickbait way of saying it. You get the sense that there is this. People do get institutionalized. You know, once they've been there for like 5-10 years, it's like the saying was like, you bleed yellow.
Yeah.
I think my experience was that the partners in that firm looked at me and they were like, there's no way this guy's going to be institutionalized. Like, he just doesn't fit the mold in any way. I was like the only guy that didn't go to Oxford, Cambridge or Durham, pretty much. And I think I was like one of 3 that didn't go to a private school.
Wow.
So kind of tells you what you need to know.
Good diversity.
Yeah. Well, apparently. Yeah. The numbers were like really, really low.
Yeah.
I always remember that.
How did you then end up doing what you're doing now then? So you kind of spent 5 years doing that. You've done some really cool stuff. You're kind of maybe it's like fighting its system a little bit.
Yeah.
How did you make the jump from that to this?
Yeah, so a couple of things. The startup network was an amazing experience to build my network. And I was I think at one point I was going to like 3 events, maybe 4 events a week in London's startup scene. And obviously this was pre-Brexit. So the whole concept of Silicon Roundabout and, you know, like Google had just relocated its offices into Europe and was investing a lot in the ecosystem. And you had Google Campus on Worship Street. It was alive. Yeah. Like there was something happening and it was a really exciting time. And you had great companies like Citymapper and all coming to fruition, and they were like British businesses. And you're like, wow, like we can actually build a legitimate alternative to the Bay Area here. And building out that network, I basically got the opportunity to work with some awesome founders as clients. So I got like a front row seat, and then occasionally got into some board meetings with those founders. And we were providing things like tax compliance, R&D tax credits. We had an M&A division, so we were helping them with Series A, Series B, and beyond. And that experience taught me that there's an amazingly exciting path in tech. If you can surround yourself with the right people, the right team, and some funding, you can build sustainable products that scale. So I had a bit of like a kind of mini MBA, I guess. The other thing that happened was when I got seconded to Seren, I ended up being the kind of sole BD guy. So I was initially reporting to the BD director. BD director lost his job. I ended up reporting to the CEO of Seren, who is today a mentor of mine, Richard Sedley. So I then cut my teeth on sales, and ended up doing quite a lot of go-to-market transformation projects. So whether that was like CRM implementations, implementing Salesforce, got into that space and observed the huge problems that existed in the go-to-market side of things. I think just the final thing that happened in that period was through my startup network experience. I met my today co-founder, Ash. So Ash was early team at Just Eat, first marketing director. He had a couple of businesses since then. He just exited a business in Dubai, had a bit of a soft landing, had lost his t-shirt quite a few times, angel investing, and was working on his current then project, which was his book. So he wrote a book called The Unfair Advantage. And I was like really inspired by the book. And I was like, this is a really cool concept. And what Ash is basically documenting his book is kind of all the things that I believe in, which is that we all have strengths, we all have unfair advantages, but many of us lack the self-awareness to really understand what those are and how we double down on them to realize our potential. So Ash and I just kind of I have this kind of rule that if something happens 3 times, you've got to act on it. So Ash and I bumped into each other like at a random networking event. We bumped into each other at a dinner, and then we randomly bumped into each other at Box Park in Shoreditch, which I don't even know, is that still there?
I think so.
I thought I heard they were going to take it down.
Are they?
Yeah. And at that moment, I was like, the universe is sort of trying to tell me something here. I think I need to lean into this relationship with Ash and see where it's going. And then he came to me with the idea for Uhubs, and he was like, I always remember he created a pitch deck, and he had like 5 team members on this pitch deck with like avatar faces, but he had me and him as co-founders. And he was like, I've got this idea for this business that I want to build, aligns with the book's thing of the unfair advantage, and I think you'd be a great co-founder. And then I brought in that experience of the work I'd be doing in go-to-market transformation. I was like, if we're going to focus on a specific niche for helping people realize their potential, go-to-market is the place to do it because they've got problems. And that was the kind of coming together of how the business came to be.
And so what is the problem fundamentally that you're solving then with it?
The problem is that scaling an effective sales team or go-to-market team is really bloody hard. So the current data, there was a piece of research that was done by Salesforce in Q1 of this year, found that 78% of salespeople missed their sales targets.
Wow.
So if you think about like the return on investment, those organizations that are literally investing billions of dollars in salespeople, the reliance is on the 22%. Like it's such a small pool of individuals that are basically carrying the load. So we've recognized that model is broken, and there's kind of just this acceptance that it's a power law, it's the way it's always been. But that's nuts. Like it doesn't have to be that way. Like there is a better way that we can solve that problem. So what we do at Uhubs is we use data and assessment and benchmarking to help revenue leaders identify what great looks like in each of the roles in their go-to-market team. And then we use some AI to help them formulate a roadmap of initiatives that they can implement that can help them close that gap and improve the performance and ultimately the efficiency of their go-to-market teams.
So you can really dive and analyze at quite a root cause level what's causing people be behind target.
Correct. So the kind of rule of thumb or logic up until this point has been sales is a numbers game. It's binary. You either hit your quota or you don't. And I have all of this data inside of Salesforce that tells me why my sales reps are hitting target. But what the numbers fail to appreciate is the human component that's completely missing. When you look at a Salesforce dashboard, it doesn't tell you someone's deep-rooted beliefs. It doesn't tell you, their motivation levels. It doesn't tell you the level of support that they're getting from their line manager or not. There's all of these variables that make up high performance that are kind of being missed. And the traditional thinking is that, well, it's just that stuff's kind of ineffable. Like we can't actually measure it. Actually, what we've proven in recent years is that you can, and you can use a framework and you can use a process to start to help you get much more data driven about what great looks like. And so that, in simple terms, the way that we do it is we do look at the numbers. So we do look at the quantitative side.
Yeah.
But then we also add a qualitative component. So we have a 360 assessment that we deploy through our technology, which we call the Pulse. And what that does is it benchmarks your team members versus a set of capabilities. So it's an assessment format. And then the final input is we also layer in call recording data.
Nice.
So we get those kind of that triple threat of quantitative plus the assessment and the qualitative of what's actually happening in sales conversations. And you combine those three things together and you can get a much richer picture of what separates your high performers from the rest.
Yeah, I suppose if you're seeing that analysing your sales team, having run a recruitment business, you can see that go, okay, well, a lot of your data is lagging. You can maybe see some activity stats in the ranch rep. The qualitative bit, you're kind of dependent on the manager of that team. And you're seeing, right. I mean, it rings a bell, the sense like you're quite reliant on your sort of top tranche of performers, and you've got quite a lot of underperformers, and then your juniors coming through. It's quite an expensive team to run.
It's wild.
So I can imagine that the value in being able to like deep dive properly from what you've seen though, like if we're saying like 78 to 22 is kind of like the starting ratio, where do you feel with data and support you can get that balance to?
One of the metrics that we focus on heavily is revenue per head.
Mm-hmm.
So we do a lot of work with private equity firms.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes, their portfolios are sitting kind of in that 10 to 200 million revenue range oftentimes.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to fix this broken distribution problem of like, how do we get more revenue per head? And how do we do more revenue with maybe the same headcount or slightly fewer headcount?
Mm-hmm.
We've been able to see as much as 83% increases in revenue per head, which is significant. So kind of
handy.
almost doubling revenue per head, which private equity boards kind of really appreciate, because obviously this is helping them drive higher valuations of their portcos. But I think just the final piece I kind of mentioned that's really important in the approach is that a lot of leadership teams stop at the quantitative metrics. So they will look and they'll say, yeah, we know, our high performers, their win rate is much higher than our lower performers and they have more pipeline. But they'll stop there. And in our view, that those KPIs are very much lagging. You don't know what your win rate is until the end of the month, until the end of the quarter. The process we provide shines a light on the leading indicators. It's like, what are the capabilities and the level of process adoption that's driving those KPIs that then result in revenue? And that really is the kind of secret sauce. That's that when you can get much more clarity around that, you can start to make, way better decisions around hiring profile. Like, which type of individuals do we need to bring into the team based on what we know is already working? Where do we invest our training budgets? Instead of just doing a tick box.
Yeah.
Let's invest, hundreds of thousands with this training provider and give the same to everyone. Whoa. Let's think strategically. Like, there's no point dragging your high performer through a piece of generic training. It's just going to piss them off. They're not going to feel invested in.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of solving these key strategic decisions and performance management. Who do we double down on? Who do we look to actually transition to a different role in the org?
Yeah.
So these are the types of outcomes that we enable. And historically, the only way you can do that is by hiring a team of consultants who will charge you a fortune and give you a 100-page slide deck.
Yeah.
So we deliver that in a much more elegant technology-enabled way.
So, I mean, I don't think I know a single founder who would go, oh, my GTM team's killing it. I don't want to make them better. Or I don't want to know more about what's going on. It feels like a pretty universal problem with people I coach. Like, I suppose the thing that's interesting for me is like, if you had, when you're coming to the analysis, are you having to set that up on a company by company basis, or are you finding there are certain sort of like what good looks like, what great looks like is fairly universal?
It's a great question. We do it on a company by company basis. So we're very consultative. I kind of describe us more as a tech enabled service rather than a pure technology. That being said, we have a bunch of industry benchmarking data. I've done this for 5 years now. So we will provide a lot of support at the front end of the process, setting it up to say, you might already have some stuff in a spreadsheet around types of attributes that you want your business development managers to possess. That's great. We'll leverage that. But actually, here's a recommended profile. Like, this is what we're seeing the types of capabilities look like for businesses of your size, your stage of growth, your types of deal sizes. So it's kind of a little bit of both. We'll kind of leverage any pre-existing work they've done, but we'll bring our industry benchmarks and insights into the process. And then we'll also help on an ongoing basis with external benchmarking.
Right.
So you might think that the hires that you've made are capable and great and are going to be amazing. It's just a matter of time. But actually, like, we can provide some benchmarks to show you that actually, those account executives that you hired are taking way longer to ramp. They're way behind what we're typically seeing as a high performer profile in the industry. You might want to rethink your onboarding program. You might want to actually look at maybe considering rehiring.
Because in my experience, it's kind of like when you do a CRM implementation the first time, you go, oh, it's really great. I'm going to customize this to, like, we're so unique. We do this such a unique way. We're going to customize it to, and you, after a while, like, the best way to do a CRM program is basically implement it out the box and then iterate as you can. I imagine it's probably the same with people. You go like, oh, my culture's so different. My way of doing things so different. We're totally unique. But actually, if you started using pretty standard profiling, you'd have a very good. You'd be so much better off than without anything.
Yeah, we do see a lot of that. We see it. To be honest with you, we find that the customer teams we work with get more hung up on things like wording. So they want, they might not want negotiation used as a capability description, because internally they call it problem identification, or it's kind of very semantic stuff that we find customers get hung up on. And actually what we find is, for the initial baseline, we really advocate for, let's start off with an initial capability profile for each role.
Yeah.
Once we've put the team through the process once, we'll get a ton of insights that we can then use to iterate and improve moving forwards. And we find that approach works a lot better.
And what's the difference, let's say, good to great? I mean, so I work with clients like this idea of, like, identifying A, Bs, and Cs within your teams. And I would say, like, an A is like 10x a B. Like, it's really transformational. From what you're seeing, like, getting people from, let's say, from good to great, is there that sort of level of quantum of difference in outcome?
I think a couple of things on this point. Oftentimes I think, can delude ourselves by thinking that we can make every B player or C player into an A player. I think there's a little bit of expectation management that needs to be done up front, which is to say, to use a sports analogy, you might have one or two, you might have a Ronaldo or a Messi in your team, but trying to set the expectation, the benchmark that you're going to bring the rest of the team up to that exact level, I think can cause a few problems in terms of motivation and for the teams as well. So I think there's just a bit of expectation management. What we advocate for is that the client starts to think about some acceptable benchmarks. So, like, what are some performance benchmarks that you want to get your B and C players up to that aren't perhaps at the exact level of your highest performers, but they will mean that you will comfortably exceed all of your revenue growth aspirations. So maybe your A player has a conversion rate of 45%. The rest of the team are averaging 25.
Yeah.
That's a huge delta.
Yeah.
Like, to make a 20% uplift across the board in win rate, across a team of, sometimes, our customers have hundreds, if not thousands, of sales reps, it's just unreasonable. But actually, what if we thought about a 30% threshold? So that's a 5% improvement on average across this cohort of reps. And actually, you multiply that out across the current close one revenue. What is that? You can quantify it. Like, what does it mean for the business? Well, actually, that would mean X million per quarter in incremental revenue gain. What would that mean for your revenue forecast? Oh, it'd be huge. So, we recommend customers set some internal expected benchmarks for KPIs and performance levels. And then we aim on, and the same thing goes for capabilities, and then we aim on driving B and C players up to those levels rather than the kind of unrealistic expectations of the Lionel Messis that everyone, most sales teams has one or two. I think that's one thing that's really important. I think just the final, another key kind of critical point of failure that we see is at the frontline manager level.
Mm-hmm.
We see a lot of pain around those frontline managers in today's market. A lot of managers have been promoted very quickly. We've been through a crazy period of economic growth with 0 interest rates for 5 years. People that maybe started their working careers in 2020, 2021 had a very deluded view of what a career looked like. And they maybe got promoted within 2 years into a manager role. We've now got this generation of frontline sales managers who've never been enabled and coached on how to be a manager. And basically what we have observed for the last couple of years in the market is that they're kind of trying to be super reps where they're just like closing their team members' deals on their behalf. And they think that's what a good manager does. It's a huge, huge problem. And it's hindering the growth of the junior sales reps that are now coming through.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we're observing is that what ends up happening is these managers get dragged into spending most of their time with the underperformers because they're the ones that aren't delivering anything. And then that becomes a huge attrition risk because then your high performers, and we see it in our own data, they're scoring their manager support levels really low. They're like, well, my manager doesn't really do anything for me. They just kind of get in the way.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, a high performer is not going to be inspired to come to work every day if they feel like they've got a manager that just spends all their time with the underperformers and just kind of ignores them. So these are like massive risks to businesses. And I think leadership, the work we do in shining a light on some of these data points, which the leadership team may not have visibility on, it's really powerful.
It's strange because I have a thing called No Excuses Framework, which looks at like management capability and like A, B's and C's. And one of the messages I always say to people, because I think this management issue is not related just to go to market. I mean, management is an issue since I've begun my career. Like this idea of you spend your time on your urgent problems as a manager, which are your C's, rather than spending your time with your A's because they're actually the ones that are going to give great return. It's such an important mindset shift and what that means for how you manage. But
yeah,
I think fundamentally people are badly trained at management, or certainly aren't. They very learn the right mindset for management. It's something you sort of management is something you fall into, rather than something you specialize in.
And we've completely forgotten the managers.
Yeah.
If you think about like all of the budgets that get signed off for training for so long, it's all about the individual contributors.
Yeah.
But how many managers have actually been? I remember when I made manager at EY, we got sent off to Amsterdam and did like a proper manager course. I did one other leadership course when I was starting to build Uhubs, and those are like the only two things. But it's like there's not a ton of investment going into our managers. They're like the forgotten population.
Yeah,
and they are arguably way more influential in terms of driving behavior change and outcomes than the individual contributors.
Yeah. I think so that first line management, they're your most junior managers, your most inexperienced, and they impact all of your frontline people directly. Probably have to say in hiring them as well. And actually they're your worst managers, and they're also kind of swamped trying to do the day job as well.
It's bonkers.
It is probably the single greatest point of failure in organizations.
100%. And we pretty exclusively advocate for starting with the manager group.
Yeah.
So when we're setting up a capability benchmarking process, we start with the managers first. Let's get an understanding of what great looks like across this manager group.
Yeah.
And then we replicate the process out across the reps. And, because that is, again, you can have the greatest approach to hiring, enabling your individual contributors. But if you've got a toxic manager group that just have no capabilities, you're going to be running into loads of headwinds when you're trying to hit your growth goals.
Oh, I could talk to you about this for hours. Like you've gone straight into my favorite pain point.
Welcome to your world. Yeah.
Well, what is one thing like this go-to-market team stuff is, so good for founders. what is like one practical thing that you would say to founders with the data that you have and your experience over the last 5 years? What's like one thing they should really, they could go back in the business today and go, do this?
I think it's really important to think about stage of company, because like hiring your first salesperson, it's a very different sport to thinking about how you're going to improve a team of 50 in your go-to-market function if you're sort of post Series B, C. So it's difficult to kind of provide like a kind of generic one-size-fits-all principle. I think hiring is where we see just the most challenges.
Right.
And I don't think there's enough intentionality around how hiring is conducted. And I think that is common across the board. It's actually maybe even worse so at the later stages, because hiring has then kind of got a little bit less out of the control and influence of the founding team. And it's really difficult to scale hiring quality in our experience, because you're then reliant on the frontline managers that you've hired to then continue bringing in high caliber talent.
Yeah.
So you can see why a lot of founders are really militant about owning the hiring process, even into like hundreds of employees. I totally get that. So that being said, I think that is a kind of just going into a hiring decision based on gut feel, I think is really risky business, and not having any identification of what great looks like, and actually what are the things that are mission critical for success in the role, and what are maybe the one or two things that you're willing to compromise on, whether it be kind of skills or knowledge, which can be coached. So I would say, like, if you have upcoming hires, I would really start to think about how can you be more intentional about using some data in that hiring process, rather than just gut feel of the interview went well, I like the person, I've got a good feeling.
Yeah, I mean, an unstructured interview is like, you might as well not do it in the first place. And I think a lot of people like to think they've got a good sense of people. I've got a good, I'll know whether I felt in the first 5 seconds whether they were right. It's like, those are very dangerous. But it sounds like you can provide them potentially the capabilities to check against, but then you've still got to train your managers and your teams on how to run a good hiring process. And like, so there's not a simple solution, but it does sound like very helpfully you can actually help identify what they should be looking for, which will lead to get the highest chance of getting high performers.
Exactly right. Yeah. So we provide some tools, right? So we generate things like tailored interview scorecards. So now, instead of your frontline managers going into hiring interviews with their own kind of freestyle approach, every manager interviews differently, which is pretty wild. Here's a consistent set of questions that align to capabilities that we know are really important within our business. That at least starts to raise the baseline of hiring quality.
Yeah.
To your point, for sure, there's still an initiative that needs to happen alongside that to enable that manager group on how to use the scorecards. And that's where the kind of service component comes alongside the technology. Tech can't do it all. It would be foolish of me to sit here and preach and say, like, we have the silver bullet solution to all of your go-to-market problems. It's just disingenuous. But there are things that we can do that don't require a ton of time and investment, and can make a huge difference in sort of helping raise the bar.
Matt has been super helpful. Having run sales teams, and like, say, I can feel the problem, all the stuff you're talking around in terms of like, I'm sort of going back and wish I had some of this data before.
Yeah.
Because that identification, the benchmarking, what's up is so helpful. Like, without it, you are guessing. And I like how you're bringing the three elements together. Like, if you could just go back in time and just create this 10 years ago, that'd be great.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, look, we're fortunate in that the time that we're building now as well is just like such an exciting time to be building. So that, the speed of development and some of the things that our product team are coming out with is very exciting. So we couldn't have done what we're doing 10 years ago, to be fair. But that's why I think this is the best time to be building a business. I mentioned before we came on air that, I spent the last few months in San Francisco. It genuinely feels like a gold rush.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the best talent in the world has just all got up at once and decided we're going back to San Francisco. Like, we're going to make this happen.
Yeah.
And obviously there's crazy unicorn stories about 9 months to get to 100 million in revenue with Lovable and stuff. But those are like inspiring this next generation. And is it a bubble? I mean, yeah, but I think bubbles are a necessary part of progress.
Yeah. Yeah. The two are not sort of can still hold. Like, it can be a bubble, but it can still be the direction of travel. Maybe that's a nice really like go to San Francisco. Tip 2, like 1, look at your data. 2, go to San Francisco.
Yeah, I literally I've been advocating to all of my founder network, like, if you can, lifestyle wise, like, if you can make it work, just go spend a month out there. You will. I learned more particularly from a sort of a customer and product development standpoint. I feel like I could achieve more in a week than I can in a month, usually, because you're so concentrated. You're having dinners 2 or 3 times a week with incredible people. You're working from other founders' offices and getting free feedback and consulting from really smart people. And it's just like every day. It's the talent density is so much so that, it's like walking down the street one day and you just bump into people, which is really difficult. To my other point, I felt like we sort of had an opportunity to do that in London, and then some things like Brexit didn't help. But in San Francisco, it's a small place. It's like, I think it's 7 by 7 miles. It's like, it's a small grid of streets. So the kind of happenstance meetings take place there. It's just the serendipity in that city is crazy.
Yeah.
I'd encourage all founders at this moment, like, just go and experience it, and you'll come back with, at the worst, like 100 to 1,000 ideas for your business. You'll come out with a bunch of energy as well, because the energy there is crazy right now.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, Matt, thank you so much for this. Great to chat, and I think some very valuable takeaways for founders generally, but specifically with go-to-market teams. So thank you.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, hopefully 1 or 2 insights in there were useful for the audience, but appreciate the time.
So thanks for tuning in today. That was a longer episode than normal. Some really great takeaways around go-to-market and how to really drive performance in your sales teams. We'll be back next week with more founder and post-bag episodes. Tune in Monday and Wednesday. And as always, if any questions, drop them across to hello@peer-effect.com. See you next week.